second paper. Okay, so starting the school year on the right foot, effects on a summer learning program targeting low-performing students in Italy. Azzolini, Pazzoli, Burlan, Burettore, here together with us is Davide Azzolini. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. So I'm going to present the results of an evaluation study of a summer learning program that we have been done in 2022. So before entering the details of the study and showing you some results, a little bit of a background and motivation for this study. So I guess you all know what summer learning loss is. It's basically that phenomenon according to which students basically lose some of their learning when the school is off and the summer vacation starts. And there are three main arguments in favor of investments in summer learning programs that I summarize as follows. So the first argument, which is very popular, is that the summer learning loss will be substantial and have also lasting effects on student careers. The evidence on this is mixed, but it is still an important and popular argument in favor of summer learning programs. The second argument is that even if also here the evidence is a bit mixed, the second argument is that summer learning loss would affect vulnerable students more than others. So it would be a kind of phenomenon that exacerbates the achievement gap. And the third argument is that even if you don't buy the first and the second argument, the third argument says that summer is a period of the year when learning stagnates for everyone. If it doesn't go down, it stagnates. So it is perceived as a prime time to invest in helping disadvantaged students to catch up with those performing better. And this is even more true in the post-pandemic period, because as we have seen, the pandemic has had important effects on students' learning across the board, and especially on disadvantaged students, at least in some countries. The good news is that there is some good evidence supporting these kind of programs. There are two systematic reviews. They focus mainly on, and this is a limitation, on studies carried out in the United States, but they report positive effects of these programs on students' reading and mathematics achievement. So what we try to do with this study is estimate the effects of Archipelago Educativo, which was one of the first and most, the largest summer learning program carried out in the country, targeting vulnerable students in Italy. We evaluate the 2022 edition. And we argue that we make two contributions basically to the literature. First, we try and extend the evidence base backing this kind of program, because as I said, they are basically, all the studies are basically done on United States programs. And Italy is, by the way, a very peculiar context, because summer vacation, as you know, is quite long. So there are reasons to believe that summer learning loss could be substantial in this country. And there is also some evidence from Sabella 2014 that summer learning loss is real in Italy. This is a study carried out in Rome. And there is also a study which is still going on by Argentina and Barbeta, trying to estimate the effects of an intervention, a small-scale intervention, to counteract summer learning loss. Second contribution is that beyond looking at mathematics and reading, we also try and see whether this kind of participating in these programs during summer have an effect on non-cognitive outcomes. Basically, we focus on students' attitudes towards traditional school, which is something that, in my view, has not been done earlier. So Archipelago Educativo is a program run by Save the Children Italia and Fondazione Agnelli. As I said, we focus on the 2022 edition of the program. The program has a substantial duration, which is one of the features that, according to the literature, is important in this kind of programs. it lasts like 100 hours during summer, and these hours are split into main program components or to activity lines. The first one is 88 hours of educational and recreational workshops that were delivered in small groups, like 10 students each. And important to stress, this program was trying to move away from traditional schooling approaches like textbook approaches and rather focus on a collaborative and playful approach. Because one of the criticisms that these programs have is that we don't want to bother students in summer, right? They need time to free their mind and have a kind of playful time and learn by play. The second component is instead a personalized tutoring that was delivered actually not individually but in small groups of 2 or 3 students that were grouped together based on the areas where they were like lagging behind in either mathematics or reading. The program was run across 11 experimental sites basically all across the country, and it was delivered in 2 formats. One, I will give you more details in a while. One was more intensive and was run in a shorter number of weeks during summer. It lasted all day, so also in the afternoon. The other format was more extensive, only in the morning and covering a wider span of weeks during summer. This picture gives you an idea of how the program was implemented across several parts of the country, so this should speak in favor of the external validity of the results that we can get from the study. The study involved about 1,000 students, and 40% of them were coming from the last 2 grades of primary schools, whereas the others were coming from basically Scuola Media. Regarding students' characteristics, as I said, and I will tell you more about this, the program was targeted to vulnerable students, so to students that were in need of learning support. So about more than 3 out of 10 students had a migrant background, and again, a similar share of students were classified as students having special education needs. So this nice picture here gives you an overview idea of what the evaluation research was. So shortly before the summer break in 2022, schools referred 1,600 students that were defined as students with low performance or students needing help during summer. And those students, out of those students, some, so 1,000 students and 38 students accepted to participate. They registered, they signed up to the program and went to the study, and they filled out a baseline test of their competencies. Those students were then randomized into 2 groups. Those located with the intervention could get access to the program that I described earlier, and the other ones included in the control group were promised the opportunity of participating in a sort of program that was planned to be delivered in fall, so in September, October of the next school year, and it was a program basically based on tutoring. When the new school year started, then all students were assessed again in terms of their competences. A few details about the randomization. So it's important to remind that all applicants, so all of the 1,038 students, were aware of the randomization design, right? So they were aware of the fact that they were either in the treatment group, of course, but also in the control group. They were fully aware of it, and they gave their consent to this design. I skip some details because I think they're not very relevant here. We did all the usual checks in order to test that the 2 groups were balanced, both in terms of baseline characteristics as well as non-response and attrition in the follow-up survey. And I think we have arguments and data to state that the randomization went well and the two groups are actually comparable. In terms of data, we used two sources of data: the school administrative data that were like produced by schools when they referred students in the very first place. And this was a rich Excel sheet with information on socio-demographic characteristics, past school performance, absenteeism, and so on and so forth. What's more important is that we, of course, we did some achievement tests, both at baseline and follow-up, as I said. The tests were produced from material that was adapted by Mondadori Education, and all the tests were tried out with some teachers before going to the field. They were administered through computers by program staff, which is a criticism, possibly, theoretically, because the staff of Archipelago Educativo was in charge of the data collection. We had 4 tests. I don't know if I said it earlier. So we had grammar and text comprehension, goes under the literacy kind of area, and arithmetic and geometry for mathematics. Students with special education needs received slightly simplified versions of the test, but very, very minor changes for them. Most of the questions were multiple choice questions, and we use, we compute a score for each of the 4 tests, which ranges from 0 to 10. We normalize it basically. If you have 0, it means that all your answers were wrong, and if you have 10, it means that you had everything correct. This picture gives you an overview of the timeline of the project across the 11 experimental sites. You see, for example, the red bar gives you the time range of the baseline data collection. It all started before the end of the school and was completed before the end of the first school year. The blue bars show you when the program was active, right? And you see that basically in August, all activities were suspended in all areas, and then were resumed before the end of the school year, when the end of summer, when then the follow-up tests were conducted. So implementation. So we assigned to the treatment group 722 students, but only 530 accepted to participate, so 7 out of 10. Those that attended the programs, they showed up at least once. They attended on average 61 hours of workshop and 10 hours of tutoring, so 71 hours in total out of 100, which I think is a good attendance rate, if you can call it like that. And we also surveyed their satisfaction with the activities. And I think one aspect that I should highlight is that students coming from primary schools were, on average, more satisfied with the activities. We asked about agreement with the different activities, like the workshops, the tutoring, and the one-day GITA that they did during summer. The trips they did trips in the local areas, and this was one of the main the activities that the students liked the most. They also thought that the program was useful to learn new things and make new friends, and this again was especially true for students from primary schools. So we run, we basically estimate intent to treat effects and treatment on treated effects, meaning that we estimate the effects of being offered the treatment and the effect of actually participating in the treatment, because we have this non-compliance that I mentioned earlier. We run linear regression models on the 4 different achievement tests, controlling for randomization strata and the pretreatment value of the test, as well as a number of baseline characteristics that we basically use to improve precision, but their inclusion didn't change the result. So finally, the effects. This table shows you in the first row the mean observed in the post-treatment period for the control group. Then the second row shows you the intent to treat effects, and finally you see the treatment on the treated effects. We show the effects both on using the normalized scores, 0 to 10, and we also calculate the effect size in order to have an order of magnitude of the effects that can be compared with other studies. We see, as you look at the IDT line, you see that there is a systematic positive effects of participating, of being offered the treatment for all the tests, but the effects are significant only on comprehension and only marginally for grammar. If you like compute an average score for math and literacy by putting together the 2 tests, we gain in statistical precision, so we see that the effects are statistically significant, even if only marginally also for mathematics, for the mathematics subject. If you look at the effect size, I would argue that the effects are substantial. Yeah, I'm also almost done. The effects are substantial. You look at the ITT effects for literacy, it's almost 70% of a standard deviation, which is larger than the 10% standard deviation estimated in the systematic analysis that I mentioned earlier, whereas the effect for mathematics is in line with what we see in the literature, but only marginally significant. So these are the effects that we have found. We also did some robust checks, but you can skip it. We find, in an explorative way, we also explore whether the program had differentiated effects across different groups of students, and we see that the effects are bigger for students that are labeled as students with special education needs, and they are stronger for primary school students, whereas they are basically close to 0 for students coming from lower secondary schools. And this result we are not really able to explain, but we argue it is in line with the customer satisfaction questions that we have collected that showed us that primary school students were those more happy about their experience. So then we also try and see whether since we have baseline and follow-up tests, we can see how learning growth changed from June to September for the treated and the control group in mathematics and Italian. And this graph shows you clearly that the control group tends to lose ground in both mathematics and Italian, whereas the treated group is basically either stable, so they don't improve over summer, or when we see Italian, they also show some small improvements. So the program effects we have seen earlier are a combination of both control group losing ground during summer and treated group benefiting from the program participation. This study has limitation. One of the main limitations is that we only see short-term effects. We don't see whether the effects that we see, that we detect are lasting or they fade out after a few weeks. And we can't use experimental data because the control group was offered a compensation treatment in fall, so we cannot follow the students throughout the school year. But we can look at some non-cognitive questions or outcomes that we have collected, and we see well, we don't reach any conclusions to be honest, but still we can enrich a little bit our interpretation, because we see that students in the treatment group show an higher interest basically in acquiring new competence, so a kind of intrinsic motivation in learning. At the same time, they feel they report to be more worried about going back to the usual traditional classroom activities, and they also appear to be much more worried about assessment and assignments at school. So it's a bit a puzzle, because at the same time we see students going back to school with higher level of achievement, higher motivation, but at the same time higher level of anxiety as well. Another limitation is that we don't we can't separate the effects of the two components of the program, so the tutoring part and the workshop part. We can't really explain why we find heterogeneous effects. Again, we find much stronger effects for students with special education needs and students in primary schools, but we fall short in coming up with strong explanations for this. And it will be interesting to look at cost effectiveness, right? To see, to compare the effects that we find with the cost of the program. Something we haven't done. Yeah, policy implication. I think that these results, if you read this paper together with the results of the literature, it shows again that this kind of program have a potential to improve student learning, especially for students from lower social background or for more vulnerable students. And yeah, that's it. If you have questions, this is my email. I think I'm going to leave the conference early because I have a train to catch. But if you have comments or anything or criticism, please.